Hi, we're working in section 6.1, introduction to percents. And so first I just want to think about what a percent means. You know, if I tell you 50%, some people might know that that means half, but the percent itself means divide by 100. So 50% is equal to 50 divided by 100. And if we were to write this in lowest terms, it does equal half. So percent is divide by 100, and I always hold on to the 50% so I can remember things. Sometimes I need an example. So here we have number one on the worksheet, 34%. We are going to write it as 34 over 100. And now we find that there's a 2 and 34 17 times, and 2 goes into 150 times. So 34% also is equal to 17 over 50. What we're doing in this chunk of problems is I'm giving you a percent and you're giving me back a fraction. So let's go ahead and try the next one. 400%. And that's going to be 400 divided by 100. All right. And you're asked to present this in fraction form, so you're going to reduce it. And 100 goes in 4 times into 400, and 100 goes into 1 time into 100. So really, as a fraction, this would be 4 over 1. But I noticed that your worksheet gives 4 as an answer, so we won't be too picky about that kind of thing, right? Okay, and then the next one is 1/4%, number 3, 1/4%. So that's kind of scary, just looking at the fraction and the percent in the same number. Okay, but I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm going to divide by 100. So I'm going to write this as 1/4 divided by 100. Now, because my numerator is a fraction, I can write my denominator as a fraction and then do fraction division, okay? So 1/4% is 1/4 divided by 100. 1/4 divided by 100 over 1 is equal to 1/4 times 1 over 100. And this is 1 over 400. And that is a fraction in lowest terms, so we can circle that. All right, and then the final one that we're going to do together, and then I'll ask you to do some on your own here, is 87.5%. So 87.5% is similar to the problem over here because there is a fraction piece to it. So we're going to do the same kind of thing. And we'll go back. We're going to divide by 100. We're going to keep the fraction. We're going to have that 100 eventually look like, so let's write this, 87.5 divided by 100. I want to express both the numerator and the denominator as an improper fraction. So then I could use my fraction division strategy. So in the numerator, 87.5 is 175 over 2, right? So 87 times 2 is 174 plus 1, 175 over 2. Denominator is 100 over 1. Okay, so we're doing fraction division. So we're going to multiply. We can write it out. Maybe we don't have to here. We know we're dividing by 100 over 1. So that's the same as multiplying by 1 over 100. Since we're always going to be working with that same denominator, sometimes we can get used to what's going on there. Okay, so before we multiply, let's reduce. 25, it looks like quarters and dollars here, $1. There are 4 quarters here in the dollar. And there are 7 quarters in $1.75. So this is 7 times 1 in the numerator and 2 times 4 or 8 in the denominator. Okay, so that's in lowest terms, and we see that 87.5%. What we did, we divided by 100, wrote both numbers as improper fractions, simplified, and we got our answer. Okay, so if you can pause now and do problems 5 through 8, and I'll see you when you're done. Hi, so we're going to be working on 9 through 13. We're in the first chunk, we were taking percents and transitioning them to fractions, but now we're going to be taking percents and we want to bring them to decimals. All right, so sometimes this becomes easier and sometimes it becomes less easy, and I'll show you why. So 14%, to transition this to a decimal, we know that we could always go from percent to fractions and then fractions to decimals. So I'm going to show you how that works. This is 14 divided by 100, and now I'm just going to convert to a decimal using the 100 divided into the into 14. Okay, and we get that to be 0.14, which if you remember when we talked about dividing by like 10 and 100 and 1,000, right? When we divided by 100, all we had to do was move our decimal place twice to the left, okay? And so that's going to always be the case when we have a percent, because percent means divide by 100. So we could have gone from 14% to 0.14, because that's what we do when we divide by 100. That's what we do when we convert a percent to a decimal. So that's, if it's an option, we can do it like for number 10. We're looking at this number, 310, and there's the decimal point right there. And we want to convert that to 310%, excuse me. And we're going to want to convert that to a decimal, right? So we go ahead and put where the decimal is, the invisible decimal there. And what we know is that if we just move that decimal place twice to the left, that's going to be our equivalent percent. So 310% is 3.1. All right, we'll look at number 11. So we have 0.2%. So this is going to be, because there's a percent and there's no fraction. If you look down, you'll see the next couple of ones. They get more complicated because they have fractions. But as long as there's no fraction associated, we can write this number and move the decimal place twice to the left. So 0.2% is equal to 0.002. And I'm just checking. Number 11. Yeah, okay, so far so good, great. Now we want to go to the next problem. It's going to be different. It's because we're not going to just be moving the decimal point, because it's 4/5%, number 12. 4/5%. Let's go. So we're going to have to use the definition of percent, which means divide by 100. We already know it's fraction, so we'll jump in with that fraction form. And then we're going to have to do the long division or the division problem. But first, let's go ahead and simplify the best we can, dividing by 100. So the numerator is 4/5. And we're going to divide by 100/1. So that's the same as multiplying by 1/100. Okay, simplify before we multiply. We have 4 goes into 1 times, 4 goes into 125. And now we just multiply across. So we have 1 over 25. So in order to write this as a decimal, we're going to do this division, right? 125 divided into 1. So we have to add zeros until we get a number big enough to go in. So 3 zeros. And 125, it turns out, goes into 1,000 8 times. Now, I didn't just know that. This is my second time through this video because the first time I made a mistake. But you can check 125 times 8. Is 1,000. Okay. And so that's our answer. And we're going to do one more problem and then take a break and give you guys some practice. Practice on pause. Okay, so it's going to be similar. So maybe I can leave that one up there a little so we can see it. Number 13. It's 4 1/5%. It's a little different, but it's not that much different, right? It's a little bit different because it's a mixed number rather than just a proper fraction. But everything we do, we're going to do the same. 4 1/5 divided by 100 over 1. We're going to convert the numerator into an improper fraction. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21 over 5. And we're going to divide that by 100 over 1. So let's see how this goes. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal because we're dividing by 100 over 1. So we're going to multiply by 1 over 100. So we end up with the numerator multiplying across is 21, and the denominator is 500. Good. Okay, so we're going to convert now the fraction in simplest form into a decimal. Okay, so how many times does 500 go into 21? None, so that's why we're going to use some decimal points to help us out. Okay, try one more. There you go. So 500 does go into 2,100 4 times. 500 times 4 is 2,000. Bring down the 100. And now we're going to bring down one more 0. And 500 goes into 1,000 2 times. And done. So we have that 4 1/5% is 0.042. Okay. All right. So I want you to take pause the video and work on 4 through 18, and then I'll see you back in just a bit. Hi. So in this set of problems, we're going to learn how to convert from a decimal to a percent. You know, one of the things that we've used in converting and working with numbers has been that it's always okay to multiply a number by 1 and not change its value. So, you know, sometimes when we're finding common denominators, we do that kind of thing too, right? But when we're going from a decimal to a percent, we are going to multiply by 1, but the special kind of 1 that we're going to multiply is 100%. So we can take any number, multiply it by 100%, because 100% is 1, right? 100%. is equal to 100. Percent means divide by 100, and that is equal to 1. Okay. So we're going to convert 0.12 to a percent by multiplying by 100%. Okay, so 0.12 times 100, and we can go and do this, but we also know that we're multiplying by 100, so we're going to move our decimal place twice. Okay, I probably will stick with that. If you want to pause the video and work that out long, you can, but we did go through that quite a bit a week and a half ago. So 100.12 times 100 means we're going to move this decimal place twice to the right and add the percent. So 0.12 is equal to 12%. Really, it's always going to be the case that if you have a decimal and you're going to move to a percent, you just have to move your decimal point 2 places to the right. So let's go ahead and work through a couple more problems. Number 20 is 1.668, and that's going to be equal to 166.8%. Okay, so again, multiplying by 100%. Put that out. This part here just means move your decimal point twice. Okay, and the final one is 2. We want to convert 2 to percent. Well, we converted 1 to a percent and it was 100%. So now we're going to convert 2 to a percent, and I bet it's going to be 200%. So it's 2 times 100%, and that certainly does equal 200%. Okay, so there's a couple three problems for you. You can work on 22, 23, and 24, and I'll see you back. All right, so we are up to the problems where we're going to move change a fraction to a percent. Okay, and to do that, we want to do the same thing we did when we converted a decimal to a percent. We're going to multiply times 100%. Now, we all know there's a fraction here. So the first thing we're going to do is to convert the 100 to the improper fraction. So we can use fraction multiplication. Okay, simplify. 20 goes into 20 once. 20 goes into 105 times. And let's go ahead and do the multiplication. In the numerator, it's 13 times 5. In the denominator, it's 1. And now we also have the percent. So 13 times 5 is 65. It's 65 over 1%, or you can just write that as 65%. So really, we did the same thing, but because we were working with fractions, we ended up really doing more fraction work. So number 26 is 5 over 11. 5 over 11. Multiply this times 100%. So this is 5 over 11. Oops, times 100%, right, which gives us 500 over 11%. So to continue to convert this into a decimal fraction, where there'll be a decimal and a fraction, because that's how the multiple choice options are likely going to look for you. So we're looking at 11 into 500. And work on that, please. I'm going to pause and we'll do the long division on our own. Okay, so picking up on this long division problem, I so far have 11 into 500, and we have 45, and there's still 5 left. So that's 45 remainder 5, or 45 and 5 over 11. So 5 over 11 is 45 and 5 over 11%. Okay, and again, it's going to come down to how people are asking you to display your work. And I have a couple of, another problem here. If you look at 27 and 28, it's actually the same problem, but one of them just asks for you to convert it to a percent, and that's 27, 2/3 convert to a percent, and 28 says 2/3 round to the nearest whole percent. So it's similar, so let's get going with those and see how to. So we're going to start with 27, okay? And we're given 2/3, and we're asked to change it to a percent. So we're going to multiply by a 100%. Nothing cancels, we get 200 over 3%. Okay, so we're going to work on the long division here. 3 into 200, 3 goes into 26 times. 3 goes into 26 times. And you have that remainder of 2. So 66 and 2/3%. Okay, so I'm going to erase the little bit here, but we're going to probably pick that back up again for the next problem. So 28 says, let's convert 2/3 to a decimal, but rather than having the exact answer, which we would put in fractional form here, we're asked to round to the nearest whole percent. So let's get ahead and see how that works. So the first part of the problem is exactly the same, multiplying by 100%, treating the 100 as a fraction. We end up with 200 over 3%. And then certainly I should have maybe kept that division problem. I'll just put it back up here. So 3 goes into 26 times. And we're asked to present the answer to the nearest whole percent. So in order to round to the nearest whole number, we're going to have to take it 1 decimal point out so that we can then round. So we can do that. Add a 0. 3 goes into 26 times. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to round here. We have 66.6. We have some more there, but it doesn't matter for the rounding. So 66.6 rounded to the nearest whole is 67. So 2/3, it is equal to 67% rounded to the nearest whole number. And we look here that it's also equal to 66 and 2/3. Okay, so 2/3, because it's 1/2 or bigger, ended up rounding us up. We had to round up and add 1 from 66 to 67. Okay, and I think it's your turn, so let's check. You're working on 29 through 31. So I'll see you at the end of that when you're done with 31. All right, and now I'm just going to wrap up here and we'll do the comparing stuff in class. So I'll see you in class.